Okay, so here we are. It's the afternoon session of the resource track at Planet MicroCap. Next up, we will be moving to Chile, where we have Culpeo Minerals, copper story in Chile. And here to tell us and give us an introduction is Jeff McNamara. Please, Jeff, take it away.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the Crafts for putting the conference on. It's our first time here. Culpeo is a new company. It's only about 16 months old, ASX listed. Ticker on the ASX is CPO. Recently OTCQB listed, ticker CPORF. I'm the largest shareholder, founder, and non-exec chairman. And Culpeo actually means fox. It means Atacama fox or Atacama wolf. And we chose the name because obviously it's got the copper symbol in there as well. So CU, and relates to Chile, to the foxes you see in Chile. So this picture shows the property. So this property has historically been mined, the Lana Corina property, and you can see some disturbance there in the foreground. That's the Andes in the background, and there's a highway that runs across here, across the back of the property. Standard disclaimer, read that at your leisure. I will be making forward-looking statements. So Culpeo Minerals has made a new copper and molybdenum discovery in Chile. So as I said, the company's relatively new. We're just under 18 months old. Our focus and strategy when we established the business was to focus on the Coastal Cordillera. So there are basically three geological belts in Chile. There's the Andes, which typically host the epithermals, which we've heard quite a bit about today. Then there's the Atacama Fault Zone, which is a large fault. It's basically the two plates interconnecting, the Pacific plate hitting the continental plate. Pacific plate goes underneath, and the Andes are formed by the plate going over the top. But what we're focused on is the Coastal Cordillera. So our view is this area is underexplored, and through our relationships and the fact that one of the other founders is a Chilean national, we're able to pick up, I suppose, ground that in our view most others aren't able to get access to, because Sergio Arube, our country manager and co-founder, is a Chilean national, and that's a big differentiator for us. So we have two properties in this area, Lana Corina, which is the new copper and moly discovery, and the Quelon project. Lana Corina is 350 kilometres north of Santiago. So Santiago sits down here, 3.5-hour drive on a paved highway to site. As you can see, active mining area, multiple smelters in the area. There's airports, there's ports, there's desalination plants, there's power. And importantly, we've got some interesting neighbours. So Teck have operating the Andacola mine here. That deposit is, or our deposit, Lana Corina, is very analogous to the Andacola mine. It's a series of breccia pipes with a deeper porphyry. We also have Battery Metals, who are in the region. They acquired that plant from Glencore and are looking to get that project back up and running. We had a very successful maiden drilling program. So you can see some of the numbers there, 257 metres at 1.1% copper equivalent, 173 at just over 1%, 169 at 1.21% copper equivalent. So we drilled about 15 holes. Every one of those holes except one hit a mineable width of mineralisation. Mineralisation does start at surface. We have an additional 18 targets within our land package, and we have two other projects. One I touched on, Quelon, just to the south, and then we have a third project, Las Patacas, that's further to the north. So why invest in this business? Well, we've made a new discovery. and I'll touch on copper lately. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk about gold, so we're unique because we're the only copper company in this room. But we've made a significant discovery at Lana Corina. We're in the coastal region, so as I mentioned, we have access to infrastructure and we have access to workforce. We also have an iron oxide copper gold project, both at Quelon and Las Patacas. It's an experienced team. So Culpeo is a sister company of a gold company called Tesoro Gold that's also in Chile. Tesoro is about 3 years old, and we made a significant gold discovery called the El Zorro Project. Gold Fields just bought into that company, so they took a 15% stake in the business. We did a private placement for just under 6 million with them. So we've got a proven track record of not only making discoveries, but of de-risking projects, developing them, putting them into production, and on exiting. I was also involved with Far West Mining, which was a TSXV listed company up in Region 4. They discovered the Santo Domingo project. I helped fund that, do scoping pre-fees. We sold that company to Capstone for about 600 million Canadian dollars. We're in Chile, the world's largest copper producer. As I mentioned, we have infrastructure, power and workforce available to us. We are not at altitude, so the highest point on the property is about 600 metres. And the copper fundamentals of all the commodities, I think, are the best. So simplistically, you need copper for everything that is electrical. Doesn't matter whether it's the batteries, doesn't matter whether it's the infrastructure, you need copper in those going forward. Share price about 6.6 cents, pretty tight stock for an Australian company. Just over 71 million shares out, just under 6 million options, some performance rights to management. I funded the company when it was private for the first 3 years when we reviewed assets and did some work on them. Market cap just under 6 Aussie, current cash 1.58, top 20s 39%, board and management aligned with 15% of the business. Max Chewsley is the MD, he's a geologist, he's worked in a lot of IOCG copper projects in Australia and the Middle East. Jeff Reeves, he's the other founder. He was the one who discovered the El Zorro Gold Project. He also made a discovery in Chile and de-risked that, and that business was acquired by Kinross and is now one of Kinross's operating mines in Brazil. Paul Smead and I worked together when we graduated. Paul's an engineer. We worked at Western Mining Corporation, which is now BHP. Myself, I'm a geologist. And as we say in the industry, I went to the dark side. I went to the financial side. Spent about 5 years with Societe Generale in New York, and I spent 10 years in private equity. I then sold out of that and set up a couple of companies, of which this is one. Just peer comparisons. We've basically done that on copper projects that we think are similar to our Lana Corina discovery. So, pretty modest market cap, plenty of upside here with Culpeo. The story for copper, I think, is quite amazing. And I believe one of my peers showed a similar image for gold, but fundamentally you've had very few discoveries in the last decade. You've had declining resources, declining reserves, and declining grades at mining projects. We're seeing a pickup in exploration, but typically new copper discoveries take in the order of 10 to 15 years to get into production. So as this electrification happens, there's going to be a lot of new copper need to be discovered and a new copper needing to be mined. So as I mentioned earlier, copper is fundamental to everything in the renewable and electrification space, whether it's solar, wind, power, electricity networks, EVs and batteries. It all needs copper, and it's in demand. And we've seen currently we've got the lowest inventories in over a decade. So it's a pretty interesting time for the copper markets. We've seen some recent M&A with BHP acquiring Oz, and more recently with Teck's proposed spin-out, with Glencore making an offer for them. Chile, despite what's been in the press lately about lithium and potential nationalisation, it is the world's biggest copper producer with 28% of global production. It's got the largest copper reserves with over 200 million metric tonnes. It's the most advanced economy in Latin America or South America, and that has basically come off the back of copper, off the back of mining copper and producing copper concentrate. Interestingly, the government, currently, like in many countries, is leftist leaning. They did announce potential nationalisation of copper when he was about a year and a half ago when he was elected. I think the facts are pretty straightforward. He put up a new constitution in September of last year. He needed 65% of the population to support that constitution. 63% of the population voted against it. So he was resoundingly defeated. Since that, he's done a 180 on copper. If you bring a new project into production, you get a 5-year royalty holiday. So despite what's in the press at the moment, I think lithium's a bit of a different beast. But I also suspect that what he's proposing on lithium, he doesn't control the Senate. He has to negotiate that to go through the Senate. And I suspect if it gets through, it'll be a very watered down to what the proposal is that he publicly announced. So focusing in on Lana Corina, obviously this is a schematic section, pretty fundamental geology, but basic. So what we're trying to highlight here is that you get a series of these breccia pipes, and they come to surface or near to surface. And then what happens is below that, you get your standard porphyry copper type mineralisation. This property has been mined historically. So there's about 1 million tonnes at 1.5 to 2.5% copper out of a couple of open pits and a small underground. And again, if you just look at the results from the maiden drilling program, as I mentioned, of 15 holes, all of them except one hit mineable widths of mineralisation. But what we're targeting is 50 to 100 tonnes open pittable at around 0.7, 0.8 copper equivalent. So for a company, a junior explorer, that's something that hopefully in the right market environment, you can put into production yourself. And what we're seeing is the potential for that in these breccia pipes and down to around this area where you get the silica cupola. Typically what happens is there's a transition from the breccia pipes. When you hit this silica cupola, you drill through it and you come into your sort of normally well-known more porphyry copper. And that's what we're seeing here. There's nice high-grade molybdenum here. Molybdenum's actually gone up pretty materially in price as well, about 2 to 3 times. But we are seeing a lower grade, larger porphyry sit down here in this magnetic low. So what we see is the magnetic lows are the geophysical targets that we're generating here. So we've got a modest land package at the moment. This is Lana Corina, where we've drilled it. What we're currently doing is extensive mapping and sampling of our other tenements here. We're also negotiating with our existing vendor of assets to increase this land package in the order of 5 to 6 times and to close up some of these gaps here. You can see the highway that runs through the middle of the property. Once we've secured that ground, we'll go back to Vista Montana and we'll look to drill that. Interestingly, clearly from those yellow dashed lines, Vista Montana is a multiple of what Lana Corina is. We think that Vista Montana has the potential to be a much bigger system than what we're seeing at Lana Corina. Lana Corina at the moment is about 500 metres long, 400 metres wide, and 700 metres deep. Some more schematics, but this sort of gives you an understanding of what we currently see. You've got these breccia pipes. You can see where the small scale mining's been undertaken. There is some small-scale mining here in the sort of first 100 metres underground. That's why all the holes are drilled, don't intercept the ore body to about 100, 150 metres. We didn't want to drill into any of the old voids. But you've got a nice high-grade breccia pipe, and then you've got a nice high-grade mineralised zone below that. And then at the bottom, you go through that silica cupola into the high-grade moly. And we have put a couple of holes, as I mentioned, into the deeper porphyry. It's looking like it'll be around 0.5, 0.6 copper. And that's very similar to Teck's Andacola mine up the road. Breccia pipes at surface giving you, sort of 0.8 to 1% copper equivalent, and then a much bigger porphyry at depth in the order of 400, 500 million tonnes at about 0.5 to 0.7 copper equivalent. Just some shots of the core. You can see it's pretty coarse chalcopyrite. Obviously, the historic mining, we've got some of that data on those recoveries. So it was nice high recoveries, but you can see that through how coarse the high-grade copper and chalcopyrite is, and very similar with the molybdenum. So we're pretty confident you'll make a nice saleable con out of both the copper and the moly. So this is the section of Lana Corina we've drilled. So you can see there's still breccia pipes and mag lows yet to be drilled here. But this is where we're going to focus on, and this is what excites us. You can see the physical size of this is much larger. These are the known breccias or the known breccia targets, but we expect there are others in there. And our next phase of drilling, which we expect won't occur for about 2 months, we'll be targeting those. And just a bit of focus, that's a plan view of Vista Montana, the other area. You can see there's an over a kilometre of copper anomalism at surface, a couple of intrusive centres we've identified from the geochem and the geophysics, a bit of lithium up in the corner. But we're looking forward to drilling that. We'll probably do a sort of 10-hole program on that. Quelon is our second project, 40 kilometres south. This has no historic mining, no prior drilling or exploration on it. There's multiple outcropping targets with over 3.5 or just close to 3.5% copper. We'll look to put a hole into this in the coming weeks just to test these targets. That's an earlier stage project. It's analogous to Pacubre's El Espino project. It's an IOCG. So we'll continue to work that up and drill a hole, as I said, or a couple of holes into that in the coming weeks. Las Patacas, we've done a bit of drilling here, another IOCG. This property's very close to Lundine's Candelaria mine. We've had some reasonable results here, but as I said, the strategy of the business was to focus on 0.7 to up to 1% copper equivalent. We did get some nice intercepts, but the view internally was that this isn't going to meet our threshold, so we'll probably divest this asset over the next 6 to 12 months. So just a quick look at what we're doing. A lot of focus on mapping and sampling. And using the geophysics. So that's enabled us to have such a good success rate with the drill bit. Most of the capital we raised has gone directly into the project. Small board, and we run pretty lean operation. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. So I think we'll open it up to questions. Do we have any questions from the audience for Culpeo?
At the moment, from what we know, our land position covers most of it. We're pretty advanced in expanding our land position. So it's an earning structure with a local Chilean, and he's got quite a bit of the other land around it. So we're very confident we'll bring that other ground in, and we'll expand to the north and the northwest. There's a bit of a gap here. That's a third party who we're in negotiations with, but we're pretty confident we'll be able to bring that in as well. And again, that comes back to the other founder, Sergio Rube. When it's Chilean nationals having a discussion, it's a different price point and a little less arduous to get transactions done if they're all Chilean. We've only put 2 deep holes into it. They're sort of 600-700 metre holes. So, our strategy, as I mentioned, is, focus on the near surface, sort of your first 400 to 500 metres. We will, do more deep holes, but, they cost a bit more money. So focus is on that 50, 100 million tonnes at that 0.7 to 1% copper equivalent open pittable. There's been a reasonable amount of corporate interest, for a company that's 16 months old and, drilled 15 holes into something. I was pretty surprised at the groups who have approached us. But as I said, it is analogous to Teck's project in the north, but some of the other majors, there's a shortage of projects, right? So we're actually in the throes of doing a series of site visits at the moment with different groups. The sister company, Tesoro, as I mentioned, we brought a corporate in. We're following a similar strategy there. Of course, the question is whether you can execute on that. But we've got a track record of doing it. If we can find the right partner in this area, we'll probably do it. The Japanese are probably preferred parties, but they take a bit longer. But we're having those discussions. Look, they're longer term, stickier money. They've got a slightly different business model. I mean, there's a couple of groups in the region who, who are already operating, but then a couple of the bigger Japanese groups tend to be very passive and basically, want some of the offtake. They can also help you arrange bank finance, through the Japanese banks. That is pretty cost-effective capital if you move into production. So, there's a couple of reasons there. Challenge is they, tend to move pretty slow, but you just got to work through that. Yeah, good question. So, water's the biggest issue in Chile. So on our property, talking of land acquisitions, just to the south there's actually a small gold mine. We've had a pretty good look at that. We think that sits higher up in the system. They're not making money out of that. So, as part of those acquisitions we're looking at, we'll probably acquire that. They have water rights. So we'll be able to access water there. And also in this northeast sector here, there's actually a dry creek bed, ephemeral, but there's some old small-scale smelters there, and there's some water rights attached with that ground as well. So that's another part of the, growing the concession base. So we'll be able to get water from those because that's already, been used for mining. So they can be acquired and you can source water from them. Well, there's very little oxidation. So it's pretty much primary. If you've got a big structure, maybe you get a bit of oxidation, but so part of the reason we targeted this property because you don't have the oxide, it's a bit of a trade-off, right? You can get a nice heap leach project, but we're really looking for primary. We don't have any photos of that on here, but there's a couple of small scale mines there, both underground and open pit. There's plenty of nice oxidized copper at surface. It's probably the mining hasn't been at the scale of Lana Corina. In Chile, they're quite good artisanal miners, and obviously they've got ANAMI. So the ANAMI's a state-owned entity. You can truck material to their plants. There has been some small-scale mining there. the other issue or the other part of that is so far we haven't been able to find any records of that material going to an army plant, but it's certainly the same system. Currently, it looks like structurally the system comes across from Lana Corina to Vista and then heads north. And Lana Corina, looks like it plunges to the south. So we'll do the drilling at Quellon on the back of those results and the land acquisition. We'd go back to market. So that'll probably be in 3-4 months' time. And obviously, maybe if we get lucky, some of those corporate discussions, gives us enough time to see if any of those groups are interested in participating.
Okay, well, I think we're out of time. Unless there's any other questions in the audience. Okay, well, thanks, Jeff. Really appreciate it.